to Resilience. I'm John Biggs. Today on the show, we have Andy Baynes, Chief Strategy Officer and co-founder of Tiberius Aerospace. So welcome, Andy.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks, John.
So it was wonderful. So we at the conference itself, we were on stage, but that was Chatham House rules. So we really weren't able to use a lot of that video. So I'm really happy to have you explain Tiberius in this context. You just wanted to talk about what Tiberius is, what you all are working on.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, so effectively, we are a newcomer to the defense sector. We're made up of co-founders from Silicon Valley. My background is Apple, Nest, Google. I also had several years out in Ukraine building an AI data science company there. And we have taken upon ourselves to deliver fast-paced continuous iteration, continuous design into the defense sector, starting with a 155 millimeter liquid fueled ramjet missile designed to be fired out of a howitzer. We also have a solid fuel ramjet missile that's designed to cover a 200 kilometer range with guidance. And then last but not least, we have a design and development platform called GRAIL, which is intended to federate a very large network of defense suppliers into both our and third-party capabilities. We expect GRAIL to be the largest one-stop shop of defense suppliers in the world by this time next year.
So this is a fascinating move, right? So you're at Nest, you're at a number of other hardware companies, but those hardware companies were designed to be set it and forget it, right? You put a Nest on your wall and you don't want to think about it for the next 10 years. This is a fast moving piece of technology. How did you wrap your head around building what you described as almost like configurable missiles?
Yeah, I think you can see a sort of lot of analogies to the speed that we were operating at Apple. I was at Apple for 12 years in their product design division. We had a design philosophy to keep the world's best engineers on program and continually iterating on those programs. That was the same at Nest. So we had teams that were developing new versions of the thermostat every 12 months or so. We had camera products that, of course, had to be updated on very tight cycles with, the camera doorbell and with our outdoor cameras and indoor cameras. So the trend over the last 10 years was to design hardware at the same sorts of cadences and speed as software traditionally has been delivered. And we felt that was now, in the context of defense, an existential requirement if we're going to succeed in the next war. And certainly a trend that you see coming out of frontline positions in Ukraine at the moment.
So that's fascinating. So the goal is to have one type of munition on the battlefield while simultaneously you're building the next generation. Is that a traditional method of manufacturing munitions like that?
I think some of the paradigms that we have taken a really good hard look at in terms of traditional methods of designing and deploying weapon capability are things that we're sort of turning on their head. So, for example, everything we design is open architecture. So that means we're no longer reliant on our own speed to update a capability, but also feeding in the speed and capabilities of third parties who might be owning IP on next generation seeker systems, on thermal batteries, on propulsion ignition systems. And as long as you have that open architecture with standard threaded interfaces and standard interconnects, there's no reason why those third parties couldn't be tested into your design, much in the same way early 2000s workstations were designed to accommodate graphics cards and so on, and then test, certify, qualify, and then move that next gen capability on tight cadences under various MOD contracts.
And these munitions are designed to be upgradable in the field, right? So you can program them, you can kind of hack them, right?
Yeah, so depending on the capability, but yes, I mean, that absolutely can happen. And so you can see situations today, for example, where very expensive bits of kit from the West are being shipped to Ukraine free of charge, but Ukrainians aren't using it because it's not hardened for this week's iteration of electronic warfare. So if you can't allow modern day warfighters to hack into your system and modify and upgrade it, then it's going to be rendered almost unusable in this next generation of conflict.
Isn't there a concern that you have somebody who might not be as technically proficient? I think we discussed at the event that most Ukrainian, I guess, groups, battalions have at least a few IT folks on board.
That's right.
Are they able to control this? Is this as simple as plugging in as a graphics card?
Probably not quite as simple as that. And there are certain things that you would probably safeguard for the sake of frontline safety and things like obfuscation. There are certain things that you would want to make non-writable and non-readable. And there are certain things that you would absolutely allow for hardening on the fly.
So just like an example of what they would want to do, they would add in, like you said, a piece of kit that wasn't that they didn't have before. They would be able to add it in for control or for targeting or something like that.
I think you'd need to look at it as a sort of a triage of upgrades. There would be hardware components that would need to go through a standard certification process by the program owner, let's say Tiberius, in this example. So let's say BAE has a next generation seeker system that can be threaded into a Tiberius missile. That would have to go through our own regimen of testing and certification. But then you have a second stage of targeting ISR integration and EW hardening that could be done before cold storage as part of a design setup. It could also be done in field, which is what you're seeing with aerial drones and ground drones, sea drones at the moment.
Why are you doing this now? Why aren't you building another webcam?
Say again?
Why are you doing this now? Why aren't you just building another webcam or another thermostat?
Yeah, gosh, well, there was a journey that I was absolutely on that started with hardware and then rapidly moved into hardware and software and then deep domain software in AI and data science when I moved my interest into Ukraine. Once the invasion started, got very heavily involved in more operational support, shipping medical equipment into Ukraine, evacuating refugees into Lviv. And then as part of that journey, I reconnected with an old Google friend of mine, Chad Steelberg, who said he was working on a novel liquid fuel ramjet design. And I was about ready to get back into hardware at that point. To be perfectly honest, I wasn't giving a lot of thought to the fact that this was a product that was living inside a constrained defense domain. I was just more interested in the product and in Chad, and the vision that he and I shared to really make a game-changing difference for warfighters on fighting the good fight on behalf of democracy in the West. So, 2 years on since we founded Tiberius, obviously I'm learning a lot more about the blind spots, the strengths and the weaknesses of the defense sector across NATO and Five Eyes. And what I see there are a lot of parallels to the sort of disruption we did at Apple to the music industry and the kind of disruption we did at Nest to the energy sector across. But I also see that this is just way more important than anything I'd done or contributed towards in the past. So that it almost feels like everything I have done in hardware and software in my career journey has more or less led to this purpose and mission around, Ukraine and supporting Ukraine.
Is your mission to beat the primes, to augment the primes? I guess the incumbents, right? So Raytheon, Boeing, all these big guys. Is your goal to be as big as them or to build something that's better than theirs? What's the mission statement?
I think if anything, our mission is to support primes in a sense of giving them another option, giving them an alternative to vet and federate a very broad church of defense and non-defense suppliers into open architecture systems, into a design and delivery model that perhaps separates design from manufacturing and allows them to amortize their existing manufacturing bases with third-party systems like ours, whilst building up a new commercial model around fast iterating R&D and design. So I think we see ourselves as being a bit of a blueprint that others might want to follow. We also see GRAIL, which is our platform, being a sort of off-the-shelf managed framework for them to become much more cost-effective and agile in their design processes. So I think we see ourselves much more as a support. I don't often like using the term disruptor because I think at some essence that there is a bit of disruption here, but it's very positive disruption. It's join this process and this platform and allow us to help you to move faster and reduce costs and amortize your existing heavyweight manufacturing infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like you could potentially disrupt the Arcos jukebox back in the old days with an iPod, but I don't think you want to be disrupting ICBMs that have been in circulation for a couple of years. All right, Andy, this has been.
In 2005, we had 6 very angry music executives, crowding around Apple and complaining that everything needs to go back to the days of selling CDs. But if you can build the managed commercial framework in the way that Apple did with iTunes, you can sort of start to show them a soft landing pad to be commercially successful and also keep bad actors at bay. In that case, it was Napster back in the day, right? And that comes with complaints and skepticism, but eventually it starts to take a very meaningful role and one that's scalable and sustainable. Same thing with Nest and Rush Hour Rewards, for example. You had incumbents that would treat homeowners and bill payers as if they were, I suppose almost like ratepayers rather than customers. They paid very little attention to comfort in the home. They would just switch people's cooling systems off in the middle of July in order to shave peak loads in summer periods. And we built a platform and a managed framework for those energy companies to come in and do it properly and do it in a much more choreographed sort of open source style. So that, I think that's what this is about. It's about showing next generation blueprint on how we can deliver speed and agility and cost down, performance up, all in one go.
Well, this has been great, Andy. I thank you for this. This is a nice insight on what y'all are building.
Yeah, welcome.
All right. So this has been Resilience. I'm John Biggs. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Perfect.